Welcome back to another episode of First in Cam. I am co-host Evan with my other co-host Cam, whose show it is. We are going to review a lot today, college football recap Sunday. We started off the week actually down in Oxford, Mississippi to watch what almost was the upset of the year. Washington State Cougars, which our freshman younger brother Donovan Fitzmaurice plays for, actually got some reps. We'll talk about that. Took on the number 4 team in the country, Ole Miss, and almost got him. And so we were there for the atmosphere. We went to the Grove. We looked at that. We were at the game as well. And so we're going to break that game down first, and then we'll get into the rest of what was an awesome, jam-packed Saturday football afternoon. So Cam, start me off. How did you feel the atmosphere was on an Ole Miss? We'd never been for a game, and so kind of what were your takeaways?
I liked it a lot. I had some friends go down there in college. They always enjoyed it, always talk about the game day atmosphere during football season being top notch. And you saw it right away with the tailgate. I mean, that was the best tailgating experience I've ever seen. Just the camaraderie, even the Washington State fans that had tents up. As we were walking through, we saw a lot of Washington State fans, and it was kind of surprising us. Little do we know that they are one of the best travel fans in the country. But going down there was a perfect weather day. It wasn't too hot, perfect October weather, and it was amazing. I mean, that stadium. I know I kind of joked and hated on it a little bit. It's not the greatest SEC stadium ever, but the way that they have the ability to fill it and just the whole entire atmosphere going into the game, it all was amazing.
I thought so too. I thought the Grove was much larger than I would have expected. We'd been to Mizzou tailgate before. I'm sure you'd been to a few. I've been to a few as well, just of different schools. But the Grove is special in the fact that it probably sits at a quarter mile, at a whole mile, like squareage.
Right.
And the amount of tents, the amount of people, the amount of, I would say, infrastructure. We saw a bunch of, obviously, like they're, porta potties and whatnot to use, but just like they had the trash cans all lined up and the dumpsters ready to go. And just everything that was involved in that, you can tell that they put on a real production pre-game leading into the game, which was awesome. And we were driving in, so we ended up staying about an hour out because it was Ole Miss's homecoming, and so we couldn't get anything near the campus. But as we were driving in, we were like, man, I don't. Where are all the cars? Like this is pretty rare that you don't see a ton of cars down for a game where the stadium can hold 64,000 or so. And everybody was already there. The tailgate was
Mhm.
just going crazy. And so we saw young people, obviously old people, like you said, a ton of Washington State fans. Crazy that they travel as deep as they do, but also that you felt pretty welcomed. Like it wasn't super hostile,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that probably has to do with what we felt like was going to be a blowout. If it was a highly contested game, maybe it could have been a little bit different.
Yeah.
But we definitely felt welcome. We definitely felt like if we wanted to, we could have popped at any tent. Ole Miss, Washington State. We had a great time, and I really enjoyed the pregame production. And then on the field pregame as well was pretty cool. With just the way the players were organized, everything was moving, fans were filling in, and just getting to see where the Washington State fans. So we sat on the Washington State side, like like almost parallel to or perpendicular to the end zone back left
Pylon.
pylon,
Yeah.
right? So we had a decent view. It was a little bit tough when Ole Miss was going to their student section, but I think we had a solid view to where we could see everything. And then you obviously moved down to basically front row for the basically the fourth quarter, which was an awesome view you had.
Yeah, that was great to see. Just kind of I haven't been to a college football game in a long time, and just to see the speed or lack of speed on the field and the size of these guys, it was just really great to see. Hadn't been in that close of a game in that type of environment in a long time. Talking about the number 4 team in the nation, and obviously watching our brother, we're dialed in for pretty much every snap, and that game moved by really quick. I had a thought about the DJ at the stadium. He kept things really like well spirited and played a bunch of good music. And I know that doesn't really seem like much, but to keep the vibes and the environment going in a game like this, where you talked about Ole Miss's fans not being very hostile. I think if we had Georgia, Alabama shirts on, it'd be a little bit different. I think everybody, including the fans and the team and the coaches, look past this week a little bit. And when we get into this game, we'll talk about why. And that was, I think, one of the bigger spotlights of the day was everybody kind of looking past Washington State. Oh, it's teams coming from the West Coast. They only have two teams in their conference coming down for our homecoming game. They go to Virginia next week. They got a lot of traveling to do. And Washington State gave it to them. And that game was very interesting from start to finish.
100%. I think, like you said, the DJ kept the pace up. It was one of those games where you felt like the crowd needed to will the team to get into gear a little bit. And you could say that the DJ probably was the genesis of that, getting everything going, getting things rolling. There were multiple times where it felt like the music and where we sat had to have been right in front of the biggest speakers in the house. I mean, every
Absolutely.
every beat was just you could feel it in your chest. So we probably had the loudest section of that football stadium. But he was getting it going for him, and they ended up obviously pulling it out. But it was a hell of a game and a great atmosphere, and also just I think great for the kids of Washington State. We talk about getting those experiences. Obviously, our younger brother Donovan Fitzmaurice, being a true freshman, getting some reps. Well, he was originally committed to South Dakota State. Like he was going to go up north to South
Right.
Dakota. And then that head coach takes the job at Washington State. The Washington State coach goes to Wake Forest, which they're having a decent year as well. And obviously, John Mateer and the OC, Brent Arbuckle, they go to Oklahoma. So a lot of moving parts. And so you didn't expect an SEC environment or probably an SEC team or a team that could compete with an SEC opponent. And then we get that, a few weeks into the season with what is a weird Pac-12, which is really just a Pac-2. And so I think it was awesome for the kids as well. And then they played inspired football, which made it even better.
That's a good point. With all those fans there, it's kind of hard to not really rally your team around. And we talk about the third string quarterback, Zevi Eckhouse, who starts the season off as a third string QB. Not much expectations for him going into the senior or into his senior season. And all of a sudden he's starting. He's the starting quarterback of a team that's a 32.5 point underdog. And he played really well. And the offensive coordinator drew up a really good game plan, and their defense came to play. We talk about our younger brother getting reps. We didn't really know what that was going to look like coming into this game. We knew he was going to play. That's why we went down there. But to see him sub in and rotate in on that first defensive drive, I think that kind of sparked even a lot of energy into us and made us dial in a lot too. And so that was really good to see him. I had my phone out recording every single snap that he had. And it was just really great. He looked the part out there, and that's probably the most important thing that I took away from this game is that our younger brother looked like he belonged. It looks like he has a bright future, and the coaching staff over there, it looks like there's a bunch of good guys, single snap that he had. And it was just really great. He looked the part out there, and that's probably the most important thing that I took away from this game is that our younger brother are really trying to transform this entire program.
100%. Obviously, being older brothers of somebody, and I've gotten to go through this quite a few times. You as well, just supporting a younger sibling, watching them play the sport that they love, and then also when they excel, it's just even more fun. I got to watch that with you, obviously, you and me with Brian Jr. and now Donovan, and we got to do it with Brendan, and so there was just so much that
That are really trying to transform this entire program.
we got to enjoy. But for him to get out there on that field and record his first career tackle against Ole Miss, the number 4 team in the country, that first drive was just awesome. And we were into the game, I mean, from the snap. Now, what's funny is he's 6'3", he's 280, so he says he probably looks more like 290. Very obviously small ankles, really athletic and agile player. But he's white. And the other D linemen are also white. And he's number 89. There's 99 out there. There's 88 out there. And so if you're not within like 20 yards, it's very easy to think he's out there playing. And so we had to pay even more attention, just making sure that he was on the field. And then when he was, how he was playing. But for him, and not going to give too much of that Washington State defensive game plan away, but their D linemen, if you watch the film, you'll see this clearly. They stunt a lot. The D linemen, the interior D linemen consistently have a gap that they are trying to attack and ideally take on 2 blockers, which I think that was one of the reasons Ole Miss couldn't get the run game going the way they wanted to. Keenwell AC eventually got loose for a few plays, but what makes it difficult is if you have a big guy who can fill up 2 gaps, take on 2 blockers and hold his ground, all of a sudden those run gaps aren't there. The linebackers can fill their run fills, and all of a sudden you've got a stymied offense, and specifically one that can't score in the red zone. And so when I'm watching that Washington State D line, it's like, man, if you can control the trenches against an SEC team that has a really good offense, and I didn't think such a good of a defense, but a good offense, you guys can do a lot. And so I think that was inspiring for their team. One thing I'll say about the coaching staff is we got to speak to the coaches, specifically Donovan's position coach, and then we chatted with the head coach for a second. He knew our parents, obviously. And what was interesting was the players, I think, were somewhat surprised and happy how they played. I think the coaching staff was like, we let one go. They beat us and we allowed them to. So it wasn't, I thought it'd be more of a moral victory type of approach for the team. And the coaching staff felt like, man, we lost one, like that, like they lost to Oregon State or something, like they shouldn't have happened. And so this the standard that's being set up there at Washington State,
Yes.
man, I wouldn't be surprised with success they have over the next couple of years and what that looks like. And we might be in attendance for a lot of those games.
Well, we talk about a lot of teams turning their seasons around. You look overall across the country, a lot of teams have gone from worst to top in their conference or middle of their conference now to the top. And Washington State, I don't know what's going to happen with the Pac-12 in the near future, but they were projected 5.5 wins this year. And obviously they're going to hit about 6 or 7 at the minimum. And so when you look at that, what they have next year and what they have coming back, including our younger brother who should see a significant increase in his snaps. You're looking at a place where, he could really feel at home. And that's really settling to know as a family that he went somewhere. Not only is he surrounded by good people, good teammates, he's in a different place. He's out of the Midwest, so he gets a chance to really become, his own individual. But him just specifically talking about in that defensive scheme, there's a lot of potential for him there. Not only put up great numbers, but to, get looked at. And we talk about future 2029 NFL draft or something like that. That is something that I wasn't really thinking about until I saw him play against the number 4 team in the country. And you're like, okay, this guy is standing up, Ole Miss right guards, double teams against Ole Miss, and he's making tackles, and he's, Trinidad Chambliss, one of the more athletic quarterbacks in the country. He got loose for a run, but that didn't happen until late in the game. They pretty much stifled him all game. I would say Washington State probably ruined his chance to get the Heisman Trophy. I think that's kind of out of the window now just with that type of win, but they took Ole Miss down to the wire, and I wasn't expecting it, but as the game went on, you kind of saw like, okay, Washington State not only can they win, but they have a chance to kind of take control of this game. Ole Miss, I'm just looking at them like, what was LSU doing? Like, what are these other teams doing against Ole Miss that Washington State must have excelled at? And you talked about it in the trenches. They controlled it on both the offensive line and the defensive line. And Washington State really spread them out. And they didn't really do too much over the top. But when they went over the top and went across the middle, they usually had success doing it. Meanwhile, Ole Miss didn't really go over the top as much as I expected. The fireworks weren't there as much as I thought they would be. And I think, that first drive where they go into the red zone and they turn the ball over, they gave Wazzu the confidence, like, okay, we can not only can we stop these guys, but we can kind of push these guys around a little bit. And I think that set the tone for the rest of the game. You had the big run by who's the running back? I'm over here looking at this thing just popped up. The running back, number 9, Kirby
Kirby.
Voorhees, he took off against an SEC defense. That has to feel good for him. He's a FCS transfer. So you have a lot of these guys transferring in that don't really know where they sit on the pendulum as far as competition. And then you go down to an SEC opponent in their place and really control the entire game. If you saw Lane Kiffin's comments after the game, he wasn't very pleased with how they played. They definitely weren't taking this W with they didn't like this W at all. Obviously, the 32-point favorites, they're supposed to win by a bunch, but they aren't happy going into this next week. And it could have been a look ahead game versus Georgia for them. Absolutely, no doubt about that. But they're gonna have to watch this film today and tomorrow and throughout the week and really fix some things if they want to have success the rest of the season.
Well, 100%. I think that you look at the Ole Miss team and they're coming off a bye, and so you think they should be sharp and refreshed and ready to rock. But then you look at their schedule and kind of what they have ahead. They go to Georgia, then they go to Oklahoma the following week, and then they also have South Carolina coming to them. So they have a 3-week gauntlet of teams. And so I can't blame them for looking ahead. For us specifically, obviously we drove 5.5 hours down to watch the game, and I'm thinking 32.5 point spread. Like, let's just hope that our Donovan gets in a bunch in the third quarter, fourth quarter when it's a blowout, and he can get some stats and get some reps and whatnot. And very quickly we realized, like, not only can Washington State play in this game, but it was a third quarter. So Washington State scored the first touchdown of the game. So Ole Miss got the ball, drove down, turned it over on downs. We were all like, okay, like this is something. Washington State did nothing with it. They punted it back. Ole Miss didn't score again. They missed a field goal, I believe. And then at that point, that's when Washington State scored the first touchdown of the game. Ole Miss didn't score a touchdown or didn't score until the second quarter. So Washington State had the lead. Then Ole Miss took it back going into halftime. And I was like, all right, like it's halftime, whatever. Like, how it is. And then Washington State comes out and they score a touchdown and take the lead back. So it's 14-10 at this point. Ole Miss scores, and then both teams score in the fourth quarter. And Washington State had the ball with 30 or 45 seconds and a chance to win the game or at least tie it on a field goal. They
Hmm.
didn't get down there, but they they had a chance. And so I think it was great for us as fans, for anybody in the stadium. You bought a ticket, you thought you were going to see one thing, you ended up getting a really compelling and fun game. And we got to see the competitive character of the Ole Miss football team in Washington State. I think everybody left like all the Ole Miss fans were, man, hell of a game, hell of a game. It's like, yeah, you certainly sneak out with a win. You weren't expecting to, they didn't even score 33 points. So you weren't expecting
Right.
to see anything like that. And what we got was a treat and probably what would have been one of, if not the biggest upset of the year, if you consider the number 4 team taking on what at the time was a 3-2 Washington State 33.5 point dog.
Yeah, and I said this during the middle of the game. It's if Washington State has John Mateer on that team, that's a
Mhm.
very winnable ball game. Absolutely, 100%, no doubt about it. I think that's the one thing Washington State was missing was that superior athlete on their side of the ball being able to get around the edge and dash through the Ole Miss defenses to kind of keep them on their heels. If they have John Mateer and that OC back on their squad this year, there's no doubt about that game. And I'm not saying that Washington State would have guaranteed won that game, but obviously I don't think that spread would have been as high. And I definitely think that game still goes down to the wire. So, you know, hats off to Washington State, the whole coaching staff, everybody just involved in that game. The fans showed out way more than I ever thought that they would, and just a really positive environment and a fun college football game to go to. Like you said, I was expecting the game to be 52 to 14. I probably still wouldn't have been mad, but you talk about what was it, 24-20 or 27-24
24-21.
or 24-21, like that's an amazing football game. You look around the country, you saw Northwestern beat Penn State. You saw Colorado take down Iowa State. There's just a lot of things happening. Indiana goes into Oregon and dominates. And so we'll talk about that later. And just a really action-packed college football weekend. And it's great to be immersed back into it and being able to follow not only Donovan, but Washington State and then these other teams and how they compare against Washington State. Because if the Pac-12 stays what it stays next year, they're going to be on the road playing against who knows who next season. We have no idea. They might go back to Ole Miss. They might go to USC. They might take on Georgia or Alabama, somebody else in the SEC. I'm not sure. So that'll be really interesting to see next year. But just like I said, good to know that not only does our brother belong out there, that he can really be a force to be reckoned with these years to come.
100%. And we got to experience that with our younger brother, Brendan, at Mizzou for just a little bit and just getting to watch him play and all of that. And what was interesting was at the time, Mizzou was newer-ish to the SEC, and they weren't really competitive in the SEC at that time, right? We didn't feel like they could win it at any point given that roster. Drew Lock was there, but we just felt like they were just okay. They were going to win some games and lose some games, but we never felt like they had a chance. What's fascinating about Washington State is they kind of sit in that Notre Dame realm where they're in a conference, but like not really. There's only 2 teams. And you just saw Oregon State fire their coach today after going what, 0 and well, he hasn't won a game in a
6.
while. So yeah, they're 0 and 6 now, or 0 and 7, I think it is. And so you could see Washington State kind of write their own way to the playoff potentially. I'm not calling for that next year, the year after, but if the Pac-12 continues to be just 2 teams and they can't figure it out, if Washington State schedules some teams that aren't very good, maybe 1 or 2 quality opponents, and they're sitting there at 10-2 or 11-1 or 9-3, like they could make some noise. And next thing you know, like you've got a really interesting conversation, and you got a sibling on the team that could be a part of what would be an even bigger story. So hopefully they get to a bowl game this year. That'd be awesome. We could maybe attend that as well. But just a really cool environment at Ole Miss. That was great, a really great like experience at the game, and then also just a great game. I think we couldn't have asked for a better turnout for the entire thing that we were at. So that was great.
Absolutely.